Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the comparison video. We've got the Beta FPV Beta 75X, the 65X, and the Happy Model Mobula7. If you stumbled upon this video and you haven't seen the review videos of each of these, I will put links down in the description. I'll also put some cards up here in the top right. I highly suggest you go watch those videos because you'll probably have a lot of your questions answered. I found myself in a unique position with the Mobula7 because the manufacturer contacted me directly. So I did two videos on the Mobula7. Mainly because it seemed for a long time that I was the only one that had one, and there was lots of discussion going on Facebook and RC groups and lots of questions. So I did my very best to answer all those questions as much as I could and be as thorough as I could, and hence the reason for the two videos. I generally only just do one video on a machine. I also did a mod video when it came down to the Beta 75X. As you do see, I have the Caddx EOS camera in there. I also have a video on that, and I'll link that down below if you happen to miss that. It's a TPU printed mount for the EOS 2 that Robert Thompson designed. He's also working on some other designs. As you see here, we have an adjustable camera tilt for the stock camera as well that can be used for either of the Beta FPV brushless quads. Before we get into the comparison, we have to cover one thing, which are my biases. This is information I think it's very important for you to know. One is I have a little bit more of a racing style. That's how I have fun. I like to zoom around, especially when I'm inside. I don't tend to try to do very many tricks. I might do a simple roll or something of that nature, as you may have seen in a previous video. But when it comes to acrobatics, that's just not really my thing. I do them from time to time. I will do some things outside, but in general, I'm just not a pilot who does a lot of acrobatic flips and yaw spins and various other sorts of things. It's just not something I explore. So that's one bias that I have. The other bias that I have is when I'm flying something this size, I really want to see the hoops in view. It gives me a little bit more enjoyment because I can see those hoops out front, and you get that feeling for exactly how small it is of this thing that you're flying. It's one of the reasons why I like micros, is that you can do all these acrobatic moves and you can fly fast and you can go high and you can float, but yet you're still flying something that's so small. In all three versions of this, I have PH2 connectors, as you see on the back, and I will be comparing them. I did not mod for a 2-cell battery. It's using two 1-cell sticks, just like this. And I started taking notes on these, trying to make just kind of a simple comparison. You could dive much deeper into any and all of these categories. So we'll go through the category and then we'll talk about a little bit why I reached that conclusion. We'll start off easy with the cost. So the 75X retails for $129.99, the 65X retails for $119.99, and the Mobula7 at the time of this recording is $95.99. Of course, it can cost more depending upon which version that you get. In that category, advantage Mobula7. Service/support. I think this one's really tough because in general, when it comes down to our service and support, it can be very spotty. You have people who have documented how they've gotten help on things and other people who haven't gotten help. So I think it's something that we have to consider, but it's not something that I can put in this category and give a winner or a loser. It's really going to be up in the air. In the case of the Mobula7, you're going to be going through the retailer, so that may change things a little bit on how you feel and where you purchase the Mobula7 from. Camera, I gave the edge to the Mobula7, mainly because it has a bigger mount, and therefore you can change the camera out a little bit more easy. If you have a favorite all-in-one that you like to use, you can put that in there. If you want to do a mod, it's going to be a little bit more friendly because it does have a larger compartment to hold a camera in there, and you can also tag on a separate VTX if that's of your choosing. So advantage Mobula7. VTX, I gave the edge to both the 75X and the 65X. It's got smart audio, so you can change not only your bands and channels, but you can also change the milliwatts at which your VTX is running at. So that's a definite advantage if those are features that you need. Frame also, I gave the edge to the 75X and the 65X. The Beta FPV frames seem to hold up quite a bit better than the Mobula7. The Mobula7 I've broken a number of times, and I have my original frame over here. I've repaired it up again. If you're not familiar, again, I encourage you to go watch those other videos, and I do talk about the adhesive that I use, which is welder adhesive, to shore these things up. I would say if you get the Mobula7, go ahead and buy a spare frame. Swapping the parts out to a new frame only takes about 10-15 minutes, and then you can spend that evening putting on your welder and having your frame back to normal. As you can see here, I've broken most of these hoops in two different places, usually here and here on those two locations, and it'll be just fine when I need to remount it. Canopy. In the Canopy category, I gave the advantage to the Mobula7. Now, obviously, the canopies that the beta products use are very, very thin, and they break quite often. So that's an easy advantage to give the Mobula7. Also, I would note that previously I was told by one commenter that you had to have a tall canopy like this in order to use turtle mode, and in this case you can see a much slimmer profile on the canopy, and turtle mode works just fine. So advantage on the Canopy to the Mobula7. Receiver I gave the advantage to the Beta 75 and the Beta 65 because they use off-the-shelf receivers rather than integrated receivers. So if the receiver does go bad, you have the opportunity to replace it. In the case of the Mobula7, it has an internal receiver. Advantage, Beta, brushless, whoops. I did consider the motors, but I think they're kind of all different and they fly differently. I really couldn't necessarily pinpoint one thing that made one better than another. You might also disagree with that right away, but wait a minute, we're going to get to more performance issues. Props. I didn't have any problems with the props. I haven't gone through any additional props. My props are all stock. You can see it's a little bit easier to see here and here. We have stress marks on some of the props, and they continue to work just fine. I haven't shredded any props. I didn't find them especially fragile or anything of that nature. So again, in props, push. Battery and options. In this particular case, I gave the advantage to the Beta brushless whoops, mainly because they have a larger compartment down here that you can get 1S batteries in if you choose to use those, or if you want to go with a larger battery. I know the Hobby King Nanotech 300 milliamp 2S battery does fit. They have two different versions, so if you're buying those, be careful which ones you buy. You can use the C ratings to identify which battery you want to go after. Usually we go after the higher C rating, but in the case of most of the battery C ratings, they don't really matter much. So if you happen to find a battery that's rated for 30 to 60 C versus something that's rated 60 to 120 C, it doesn't mean the 60 to 120 C battery is necessarily all that much better. And we can see on the Mobula7 that it has the standard, it's made for a larger 1S battery, like a 450 or 550 that you can put in there, and they use this ingenious design of this 3D printed piece in order to be able to get a 2S in there. I do suppose that's another area where we could mod, or we could look for an alternate sort of way of using a 3D printed piece like this, but as it sits, I give the advantage to the Beta FPV brushless product. Flight I've broken down into two categories. One is the racing style, and I think if you're racing, especially in larger spaces, say you're racing outside or you're racing in a large warehouse or a factory or something of that nature, I think the Beta 75 just edges the others out in speed, but not by a lot, and therefore it would make for a better racer. On the other side of things, if you're doing more general flight, maybe you are doing some flips and rolls and you're doing some floaty sort of action and you want to do or explore those sorts of things, I would say that the Mobula7 has the advantage. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Yaw Washout that the Beta FPV products. This video isn't something for that discussion, although it is something of consideration because I extensively tried to make the Mobula7 do the same thing and I didn't find that it did that. In racing, I give the advantage to the Beta 75X, and in general flight, I give the advantage to the Mobula7. So we have all those categories, not that there's that many, but they're categories to consider. But we have to weight those categories. They have to mean more to us as an individual. You know, you're not going to say, well, the cost is just as important as the frame, and the frame's just as important as the flight, or the props are just important as the receiver. You know, all these things are going to be weighted. So kind of the numbers game, it's kind of like statistics. If you do the right math, you can always make it work out to your advantage. In this case, you know, the Beta FPV products come out, I think it's 6-5. So in favor of the Beta FPV products. But the things that matter most to me all come from the Mobula7. I can see the hoops in the view. I have a really adjustable camera already built into the Canopy, and the flight characteristics are great. I love flying it. It's fun. It's easy to fly for me. It's not a challenge. I think the added weight of the 75 makes it much more difficult inside, especially inside a home space. If you have a larger inside space, it might be more manageable. I felt the outside flight for the Mobula7 was very, very comparable to the 75 and the 65. But the inside flight is just a lot better. And we don't have that one ugly feature that comes with the Beta FPV products right now, which is the Yaw Washout, where when you come in from a dive or you try to flatten out after a dive, or if you do a power loop over something and the machine pitches up violently and usually yaw spins one direction or another. We don't have that with the Mobula 7. And if you missed that video, I would suggest you go back and watch it too. So my pick is the Mobula 7, every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Now, other questions that might come up is, what about these? The US UK 65 and the UR 65. I don't think you need these if you buy the Mobula 7. I think, again, because you can take this camera angle and you can push it all the way down, you can basically make yourself have negative camera angle, I think. There's no purpose in getting something that has less powerful motors and shorter flight time. I just don't think there's any reason. So even with all 5 of these, and there's a few others on the market, I still get the Mobula 7. I hope it's very, very clear, because I know sometimes I'm a little bit vague about what I recommend. I'm recommending, if you want a brushless whoop, that you buy the Mobula 7. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please leave those in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.